everybody, this is Jonathan Miller, Hometown Historian channel. We are today going to talk about the Heilman family. We are coming up on Heilmandale. This is a town named after the Heilman family. They came here in the early 1700s, I believe. They were some of the founders of Hill Lutheran Church in Cleona. We're going to go over there next and visit the early gravesides of some of the earliest, well, the patriarchs of the Heilman family. And it's a really unique cemetery because this is Heilmandale here. It's really, really cool. We're going to go through here just so you can see some of the cool, there's like cool Victorian architecture. Like you can see that home there. It's just really, really pretty. Real small town. They did have a rail station here, no longer exists, but we'll do something on that and some of the other stations in Lebanon County that don't exist all at once, sort of in this chain from Lebanon to the northern branch or something, you know, along the northern branch. We'll have to turn around here then because the road doesn't go any further. It goes further, but not a whole lot. But we'll go back through there again. All right, so we're back around and go back through Heilmandale here and then go through what I would believe is part of Heilmandale as well. The road that this connects to is Heilmandale Road. This is a cool old barn there and home. Pretty neat. Just love old homes, like Victorian homes like that. It's just so neat. Such a pretty, I love that house there. Just absolutely love it. But most of these are probably 1880s, something like that, 1860s to 1880s. You know, there's some over here that are newer, obviously, but a lot of the original town, it's right around that time period. There's probably stuff that's even earlier. This is cool because this is probably an old schoolhouse over here. I'd have to look up, but Jared, who did the school, and this is all, I would assume this is all Heilmandale through here, but he and his dad Michael did a compilation on the schools and education in Lebanon County, and he has a list of all the buildings that were and still are, and that's, I'm sure that's a schoolhouse because it just has that look. But yeah, Heilmandale is named after the Heilman family, very prominent. It's unique at Hill Lutheran Church because there's either 144 or 147, it's right in the 140s of the individuals with connection to the Heilman family, either with the last name of Heilman or they were a Heilman and then got married out of the name. But yeah, it's really extraordinary because you'll see, okay, there's 10 Smiths in this cemetery, or you have the individual sections that they'll have in a cemetery, but the Heilmans, they're like everywhere in that cemetery, and you know, that has remained their church. It's much like Beanagles. I believe I forget which family it is, but there's a family there that's the predominant family there as well. So it's just cool to see like the history and see a family sort of staying by with the church that they've been going to for 7 or 8 generations, and that's, you know, it's Hill Lutheran Church is a very, very old church. I believe started in, I think 23. It's either 23 or 33. I have to look that up, and then I'll do another part of the video that goes a little more in depth into the family, like when they exactly came in, and make sure I have all the names right. But I really like this series that we're doing, and it will be a series where we look into these families that are really predominant in an area and their history. And I think it's cool for the families themselves. Like, I'm not going to be going into like the genealogy to the degree that you're just like, wow, you know, it's really, really in depth, unless I can find more information or somebody sends me more information that I can then add on to a later video. Sort of like what we did with the Lights graveyard there south of Fredericksburg. An individual who's from the family sent some more information about the 3 Light sons from the patriarch who built Light's Fort. They married 3 daughters from the Landis family, you know, so 3 sisters, and it was just sort of cool how 3 brothers married 3 sisters, which, you know, back then wasn't a ton of people in the area, so the likelihood of that would be much more likely than, say, now, where your options are quite more open there in that regard. But it's still cool, a cool, neat fact about the history of the Light family, and that's sort of what I want to do. Find some more information on the Heilman family, because there's some really good resources in that regard, and we're going to explore those a little further. And it's just sort of going along here, and then we'll go over to Hill Lutheran Church and then walk around the cemetery, just so you can see all the Heilmans there and talk about the history. You know, they were the first, number of them were the first people that were part of that church, and you know, the major, I believe the one, he wasn't the architect. He actually, I take that back. I think he was the architect. He was the guy that sort of took over. Yeah, it's plain sort of German structure, architecture, so it wasn't anything complex. It's not like having somebody come in and do like you know, one of these Gothic revival style churches that the Colemans had built, where there's a lot more architecture to it. You know, it's a normal German architecture church, and that's just how they did it. But I believe the first guy, they're buried there right next to the church. It's some of the oldest tombstones there at Hill Lutheran, and like I said, it's Heilmans everywhere. And the Lord said, "Go forth, be fruitful, and multiply." They certainly did. But yeah, you have, like I mentioned earlier, you have like 8, 9, maybe 10 generations of Heilmans that are buried there in the cemetery, and it really is, it's an extraordinarily unique thing. And when I go through other cemeteries or graveyards, when I see a Heilman, it's sort of like, yeah, it's sort of neat, because there's so much history there. So I'm running into that now with the Light family, where I'm seeing other people from the Light family that are buried, you know, around that time period when the Light family had first started settling in the area, and it's just sort of, I wonder how they're related to that family. So genealogy is a pretty neat thing, our history and all that. So we will be coming over here to Hill Lutheran here in a second. We'll go by Hill Reformed Church first, which is UCC now, United Church of Christ. But they were that was one of those churches where I was first discovering that Reformed and Lutheran churches, it was very common for them to share the same facilities early on, and then usually around 1880s to maybe the teens, the 20s, and 1900s, they would then build their own facilities, sometimes earlier, depending on the sizes of the congregations. But this is the Hill Reformed Church. Really, really pretty, like brown stone church. But they were Hill United Church of Christ, but they were Hill Reformed. But they both worshipped at the same facility, and I think one would have an earlier service, something like that, of that nature. But it was also a lot of those churches, they combined, because, you know, when you were in the settling days, it was one of those things where in 1700s, it was also, these were places of refuge. So it was necessary for them to share the same facilities, because it was in essence as well a community center, out of safety, if you will. So let me pause this here. We'll get out of Chuck and we'll start walking around the cemetery. Alright, so we're walking into the cemetery now. This is also the burial place of John Casper Stover, who was considered in a lot of ways, along with the Muhlenbergs, to be the father of the American Lutheran Church. But I really love this church. I think it's such a beautiful, just a beautiful structure. I mean, even in its simplicity, I just think it's just such the brickwork, the age, the history. We've talked about a lot of these churches. They're just so essential to our history, the legacy of our forebears, because these were not just churches. These were community centers. These were places of refuge, really extraordinary places. And feel really fortunate the more you learn the history of these places, of how essential and how amazing they really were. They're really cool places. So we're gonna go right over here at the stones where the first Heilman, the patriarch of the family, they came over. I'll wind out, like I said, I'll do another section of this video to tell you. I think, if I remember correctly, it was either German Palatinate, which is where a lot of the immigrants in this area would have came from, but they might have come from Switzerland as well. I can't remember exactly where they came from, but Switzerland sounds, if I'm remembering correctly, I think they did come, and it was early 1700s, and I think they came in through Philadelphia, if I remember correctly. But I'll have all that information later in the video just to clarify, and then have the exact names if I can't read the tombstones. It's like I just sort of spur of the moment. I was supposed to go get my shoes today, and that didn't happen. The doctor was sick, so we'll have to do that another day. But I was like, I want to do a couple videos because a friend, his mom just passed away, which we'll talk about that on when we do the hike. But so it's gonna be, the next couple days are gonna be, it's been really busy the last week or so since she took a downturn, and I've been there trying to help them out and get things ready, for the next step, family coming around, that type of stuff. And it's sad because you only have one mom really at the end of the day. And I went and saw my mom, and it makes you think. So tell those that you love, if you haven't done it for a while, tell them that you love them, because you never, this was expected, but it hurts. So let's flip this around and let's check out these first graves, and then walk around the cemetery just so you can see. We've done this before with the original Hill Lutheran Cemetery and Church video, talking about the history of the church and all that. And I'll probably put the link to that original video here, because we talk about the Heilman family a little bit there as well. But it's neat history. So here we are around this beautiful, I believe, looking at the leaves. This is one of those things I said I'm like really sad. I think it's a maple. But anyways, this is so here you have John Adam Heilman, and I believe this is a Heilman as well. Or actually, no, it's not. But I believe these were two of the guys that were largely responsible. John Casper Stover founded the church as the pastor, but these guys, John Adam Heilman, he's the one that I believe designed the church, and was in essence the architect, if you will. And this gentleman here, the Henry, I'm not sure if it's Kellinger or, you can see here closer, maybe sometimes you can see it better on the camera for some weird reason. But these two guys were, I think, they were the founding members, deacons in the church. That monument there is for the pastors of this church, and over there you see a little brick thing. That's where John Casper Stover and his wife are buried. But yeah, so he's John Adam Heilman. I believe he is, which I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but I believe he's the individual that was the patriarch of the Heilman family. Came over here. Yeah, he was born November 16th, 17, it's in the teens. He emigrated from, it looks like Switzerland is what it said. Or no, maybe it is the Palatinate. It's hard to read. I mean, this is a stone that's 250 years old easily. Yeah. So let's go around. We're going to go over here where John Casper Stover is, because I don't know if it's Heilman's over there or not, but a lot of these are in German. That one's pretty neat. But like I said, it's a lot of them. You'll find Heilman after Heilman after Heilman. You can see over there's one that's a Heilman section. I know a lot of the Stovers and some of the early ones are buried here as well, the sons and daughters of John Casper Stover. Yeah, there's Tobias Stover and John Stover. And this is where John Casper Stover is buried, and then his wife as well. Yeah, there's Emma Mary Heilman. See the Heilman there. And this is one I never saw before. I didn't even know I was through here. They have the Heilman forefathers at rest in this churchyard. John Peter from 1714 to 1782. Johannes, which is John, 1744 to 1812. Adam, 1771 to 1823. Solomon, 1802 to 1890. Levi, 1826 to 1905, and Wesley Marvin, 1851 to 1924. Yeah, so as I said, you go through this cemetery, you'll see the Heilman family buried throughout, and as I said before, we're gonna end here shortly, and then we'll go more into the history of the Heilman family. But it's like 144, I believe, that are buried throughout. So we'll go into more of the history and talk about that a little more in depth. Thanks, everybody. All right, so let's talk about the Heilman family now. So John Peter Heilman, who was the older brother of John Adam Heilman, he actually moved first. He was born in Württemberg, which was right near where his brother had lived then in Baden, which both were German Palatinate. We had talked about, wasn't sure whether they were from Switzerland or from the German Palatinate region, but they were the German Palatinate region. And John Peter actually, he came over first in 1732 to Philadelphia, and then moving into the area, he wound out buying, I think it was 366 acres in this region where Heilmandale is today. And then his brother, John Adam Heilman, wound out coming over from Germany, from Rotterdam on, I believe the ship was the Snow Two Sisters, if I'm reading that correctly, from Rotterdam. And he was warranted in 1738 150 of those acres, and they created Heilmandale. They were immediately, especially John Adam, was immediately involved in the Hill Lutheran Church. It was a Union church at that stage, both Reformed and Lutheran. That church was actually founded in 1733 by John Casper Stover. John Adam became an elder, and he wound up becoming the burgmaster, or the burmaster, which is the building master. Let's make sure, the Baumeister, I should say, which is building master, and further his congregation in the construction of the Burgkirche, which is the Hill Church, is a Union church once again. and that was dedicated in 1744. John Adam lived till 1770. John Peter lived till 1777. And from them, the Heilman clan family sprang from this area. And they were both farmers, and they lived pretty phenomenal lives. They were good guys. I don't know where John Peter is buried. I'll have to look at that a little bit more. But and I did want to mention one other thing. The other stone, I couldn't quite read it, is a Henry Keller that's buried right next to John Adam Heilman. He was one of the first two elders, I think the primary elders at the beginning of the church. But that's just a bit of the history of the Heilman family, where they came from, their founding, their patriarchs. These two brothers, which is pretty cool because I didn't realize that they were actually brothers. I knew they were related, I just didn't know that. But a lot of really interesting local history, and this is one of those families that's quite important to the area. So, as always, I want to say thank you for coming along, learning a little bit more about one of these local families and their prominence with the Hill Lutheran Church. Very much like Beanoggles Lutheran, where the early family was the family that was there from the get-go, and it's just the Heilman family has always been associated with the Hill Lutheran Church, and probably potentially I would assume with the Hill Reformed Church as well, just being that their histories were so connected for 170 years, really. So thank you once again, everybody, and as always, we'll see you all about town. One last note, John Peter Heilman is buried there at Hill Lutheran Church. That one stone that we looked at that has a number of the forefathers of the Heilman family, he's listed on that stone, but he is buried in the cemetery and was also a part of this church.